What you're about to witness happened in 1882, in a small Nevada town where humanity was bought and sold like cattle. But this isn't just another story of the Old West. Look at her, chained like an animal. Who'd want damaged goods like that? Ain't even worth the rope she's tied with. This is the story of a moment when one man's voice silenced an entire crowd, when dignity met desperation, and when two broken souls created something beautiful from the ashes of cruelty. But here's what the history books won't tell you. What happened next would shake this frontier town to its very core and prove that love doesn't see color, only courage. Stay until the very end, because the twist in this story will leave you speechless. And if you believe these untold stories deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and share this video, because every share helps preserve these forgotten voices of the American frontier. If this is your first time discovering the truth behind America's hidden history, welcome to the Black Rancher channel. I'm here to uncover the stories they never taught you in school, stories of courage, dignity, and humanity that deserve to be remembered. Hit subscribe and ring that notification bell, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about the Old West. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens in Chapter 5. Now let's dive into a story that began with chains and ended with something no one saw coming. Silver Creek, Nevada, October 1882. The autumn wind carried the scent of sagebrush and desperation through the main street of Silver Creek as Samuel Big Sam Cartwright rode into town. At 38, Sam was a mountain of a man, 6 feet 4 inches of weathered muscle and quiet determination. His dark skin bore the scars of 15 years working the unforgiving Nevada territory, building what had become the most successful cattle ranch within 100 miles. The Double S Ranch wasn't just Sam's pride, it was his 8-year-old son, Timothy's future. Ever since Samuel's wife Margaret had died of consumption 3 years ago, the boy had grown increasingly withdrawn, speaking only in whispers when he spoke at all. The local doctor said Timothy needed stability, needed a mother's touch. But in 1882, Nevada, a black widower with a mixed-race son, had about as much chance of finding a wife as striking gold in his backyard. Sam had come to Silver Creek reluctantly, drawn by a telegram from his friend Jake Morrison, the town's only honest lawman. "Something here you need to see," the message had read. "Bring your wagon, and Sam, bring your heart." As Sam guided his team down Main Street, he could hear the commotion before he saw it. A crowd had gathered in the town square, their voices carrying that particular mix of excitement and cruelty that made his stomach turn. He'd heard that sound before, during the war in the slave markets of his youth in the dark corners where humanity went to die. "What we got here is prime Oriental flesh," the auctioneer's voice boomed across the square. "Straight from San Francisco, gentlemen. She's young, she's healthy, and she'll work harder than any 3 white women." Sam's blood ran cold as he pushed through the crowd, his massive frame parting the sea of leering faces like a ship through troubled waters. What he saw on the auction block made his hands clench into fists. She couldn't have been more than 22, her delicate features framed by long black hair that hung in tangled curtains around her face. But it was the chains that stopped Sam's heart. Thick iron shackles around her wrists and ankles, connected by a length of chain that forced her to take small, shuffling steps. Her silk dress, once probably beautiful, was torn and stained with the evidence of a long, brutal journey. Her eyes, dark pools of terror and resignation, swept across the crowd of men who were discussing her like livestock. When her gaze met Sam's, something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. Or maybe just the understanding that comes when one soul recognizes another that's intimately acquainted with suffering. "Now don't let her size fool you," the auctioneer continued, prodding her with his walking stick like she was cattle. "These Oriental women are built different, strong as oxen, quiet as church mice, and they'll bear you sons without complaint." The crowd laughed, and Sam watched the woman's face crumble just a little more with each cruel comment. "She don't speak much English," called out a man in a dirty bowler hat. "How are we supposed to tell her what to do?" "Same way you train any animal," someone else shouted, "with a firm hand and a strong switch." More laughter, more degradation, more pieces of this woman's dignity scattered like leaves in the Nevada wind. "She's been examined by Doc Holly," the auctioneer announced. "Clean bill of health, and he guarantees she's unspoiled, if you know what I mean." The implications of that statement hit Sam like a physical blow. This wasn't just an auction, it was a violation of everything human and decent. "What's the bidding start at?" called a voice from the back. $50, the auctioneer replied. "But gentlemen, let me tell you what you're getting for your money. This here's Mei-Lin, brought over special from Canton province. She can cook, clean, sew, and I'm told she's got some learning. Can read and write in her heathen tongue." Sam pushed closer to the platform, his mind racing. $50. He had more than that in his saddlebags, money he'd brought to buy supplies for the ranch. But this wasn't about money. This was about something deeper, something that reached back to his own memories of being valued only for his labor, his strength, his ability to endure. "50, called out a rancher Sam recognized as Bill Hedricks, a man who was known to work his hired hands to death. "55, from another voice. "60. The bidding climbed slowly. These were hard-working men, but not rich ones. $75 represented weeks of wages for most of them. $80, Hedricks called out, his voice confident. The crowd murmured. That was serious money. The auctioneer looked around the crowd. $80? Do I hear 85? Silence. Sam could see the resignation settling over the woman's face like a shroud. In moments, she would belong to Bill Hedricks, a man who beat his horses and paid his workers in rot-gut whiskey and broken promises. That's when Timothy's face flashed in Sam's mind, his son sitting alone at their kitchen table, picking at his breakfast in silence. Timothy, who hadn't laughed since his mother died. Timothy, who flinched when other children played too loudly, who spent his days talking to Margaret's grave marker because he couldn't bring himself to talk to the living. My son needs you, Sam whispered to himself, not even realizing he'd spoken aloud. But the words, once spoken, seemed to take on a life of their own. They echoed in his mind, growing stronger with each repetition. My son needs you. My son needs you. Going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice. Sam's hand shot up before his brain could stop it. $100. His voice boomed across the suddenly silent square. The silence that followed Sam's bid was so complete that the only sound was the wind whistling through the gaps in the wooden buildings. $100, more than most of these men saw in 6 months, hung in the air like a challenge thrown down before kings. Every eye in the crowd turned to study this tall black man who had dared to outbid them all. Sam felt their stares like physical weight, but he kept his gaze fixed on the woman, Mei-Lin, whose dark eyes had gone wide with something that might have been hope. Did he say $100? The auctioneer stammered, clearly not expecting such a sum. You heard right, Sam replied, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a thick roll of bills, counting them deliberately. $100, cash money. Bill Hedricks stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Now hold on just a minute, this ain't right. We can't have... Can't have what? Sam interrupted, his voice carrying the dangerous quiet of a man who'd fought in too many battles to be intimidated by bluster. Can't have a man with honest money making an honest bid? You know damn well what I mean, Hedricks snarled. Your kind don't belong... My kind. Sam's voice dropped even lower, and several men in the crowd took instinctive steps backward. My kind fought for this country while you were still soiling your diapers. My kind built half the railroads you rode in on, and my kind earned this money through honest work, which is more than I can say for some. Jake Morrison, the sheriff, pushed through the crowd. A grizzled man in his 50s with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, Jake was one of the few people in Nevada Territory who treated Sam as an equal rather than a curiosity. What's the problem here? Jake asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. The problem, Hedricks said, is that we can't have coloreds owning white women. It ain't natural. She ain't white, someone from the crowd called out. She's Chinese. Don't matter, Hedricks shot back. The principle's the same. Jake looked around the crowd with the weary expression of a man who'd been keeping peace in frontier towns for too long. Far as I know, there ain't no law says who can and can't bid at an auction. Money's money, and his is good as anybody's. This is about more than money, a voice shouted from the back. This is about the natural order of things. Sam looked up at Mei-Lin, still chained on the platform. She was watching the argument with the expression of someone who'd learned that her fate would always be decided by others, usually while discussing her as if she weren't there. But when their eyes met again, Sam saw something that made his decision final. A flicker of desperate hope, quickly suppressed like a candle flame in a hurricane. "The natural order," Sam said slowly, his voice carrying to every corner of the square, "is that every human being deserves dignity. That woman up there," he pointed to Mei-Lin, "she's somebody's daughter, maybe somebody's sister. She's got hopes and fears and dreams just like anybody else, and right now she's scared and alone and being treated like property." He pulled out the money again, holding it high so everyone could see. "I'm offering $100 not because I want to own anybody, but because I can give her something none of you can, a chance at a life where she's treated like a human being." "They're pretty words," Hedrick sneered, "but what you're really buying is a woman to warm your bed and work your land for free." The accusation hit Sam like a slap, partly because there was enough truth in it to sting. He was a lonely man, and yes, the thought of companionship had crossed his mind. But as he looked at Mei-Lin, really looked at her, beyond the chains and the fear, he saw something else entirely. She was holding herself with a dignity that no amount of degradation could entirely strip away. Her spine was straight, despite the weight of the chains. Her chin was raised, despite the humiliation, and in her eyes, beneath the terror, Sam caught a glimpse of intelligence and strength that reminded him powerfully of his late wife, Margaret. Margaret, who had faced down angry mobs when she chose to marry a black man. Margaret, who had worked beside him to build their ranch from nothing. Margaret, who had died whispering to Sam that their son would need someone to help him remember how to smile. "You're right about one thing, Hedricks," Sam said finally. "I do need someone to work my land, but I also need someone to help raise my son, someone to bring some gentleness back to a house that's known too much sorrow. And I'm offering that woman," he gestured to Mei-Lin, "the chance to be a partner, not property." The auctioneer, who had been watching this exchange with the fascination of a man witnessing a street fight, finally cleared his throat. "Well, do I hear any bids higher than $100? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. $100 was serious money, more than most could afford, and the tension between Sam and Hedricks was thick enough to cut with a knife. 110, Hedricks said finally, his voice tight with rage. Sam didn't hesitate. 125. 130. 150. A gasp went through the crowd. $150 was more money than some of these men had ever seen in one place. Hedricks opened his mouth, then closed it. His face was purple with fury, but even he couldn't justify spending that kind of money just to spite a black rancher. "Going once for $150, the auctioneer called out, his voice practically shaking with excitement. This was the biggest sale he'd had all year. "Going twice." Sam stepped forward and placed the money on the auction block. "Before you finish that," he said, looking directly at Mei-Lin, "I want her to know something." The crowd fell silent again, straining to hear what he would say. "My name is Samuel Cartwright," he said, speaking slowly and clearly. "I own the Double S Ranch about 20 miles north of here. I have an 8-year-old son named Timothy who lost his mother 3 years ago. If you come with me, you won't be a slave or a servant. You'll be a partner, a member of our family. You'll have your own room, your own space, and the right to leave any time you choose." He paused, searching her face for any sign of understanding. "I don't know if you can understand everything I'm saying, but I want you to know my son needs you, not to work for us, but to help us remember how to be a family again." For a long moment, Mei-Lin stared at him in silence. Then, in accented but clear English, she spoke for the first time since Sam had arrived. "Your son," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying clearly in the silent square. "What is his name?" "Timothy," Sam replied, surprised by her English. "Timothy Cartwright." She nodded slowly, and for the first time since he'd seen her, something that might have been hope flickered in her eyes. "Timothy needs mother," she said simply. I can try to be good, mother." "They are sold," the auctioneer shouted before anyone could object. $150 to Samuel Cartwright. Before we continue with this incredible story, I need you to understand something. What you're witnessing here really happened. These weren't isolated incidents. Across the American frontier, thousands of stories like this played out. Stories of people finding humanity in the darkest places. The Black Rancher is committed to bringing you these forgotten tales of courage and compassion. If this story is touching your heart, imagine how many others are still waiting to be told. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because Chapter 3 is where this story takes a turn that will challenge everything you think you know about family, courage, and the true meaning of home. Don't let these stories disappear into history. Share this video and help us preserve these voices. The ride from Silver Creek to the Double S Ranch should have taken 4 hours. It took Sam and Mei-Lin nearly 6, partly because of the rough terrain, but mostly because Sam stopped every mile or so to check on his unusual passenger. She sat in the back of his wagon, still wearing the chains that the auctioneer had insisted came with the purchase. Sam had asked about removing them immediately, but the man had shaken his head. "Sorry, friend, but them chains stay on till you get her to your property. Law says we can't release bound cargo till it reaches its final destination. Prevents complications." Sam had wanted to argue, but he could feel the hostile eyes of the crowd on him. Better to get Mei-Lin away from Silver Creek first and deal with the chains later. Now, as they bounced along the rutted mountain road, Sam found himself stealing glances back at her. She sat perfectly straight despite the discomfort, her hands folded in her lap, chains clinking softly with each bump. Her dark eyes took in everything: the rolling hills covered in autumn grass, the distant peaks capped with early snow, the cattle that grazed in scattered groups across the rangeland. "This your land?" she asked suddenly, startling Sam from his thoughts. Her English was better than she'd let on in town, he realized. "Some of it," Sam replied. "The Double S runs about 3,000 acres. We mostly raise cattle, but I keep some horses too." She nodded thoughtfully. "Very big. In China, my father had small farm, maybe 5 acres, but good land near river." It was the first personal information she'd shared, and Sam found himself hungry for more. "What happened to your father's farm?" Her face clouded. "Bad men came. Said we owe money to government. Took farm, took animals. Father tried to fight." She trailed off, touching the chains unconsciously. "I'm sorry," Sam said, and meant it. "How did you end up in America?" "Man came to village. Said there were jobs in Golden Mountain, what we call California. Said Chinese girls could make good money, send home to families." She was quiet for a long moment. "Was lie. When ship arrived in San Francisco, they put us in place like prison. Said we must work to pay for passage." Sam's jaw tightened. He'd heard stories of such places, brothels and sweatshops where Chinese immigrants were trapped in brutal conditions, their labor stolen under the guise of working off debts that somehow never got smaller. "How long were you there?" 2 years, maybe 3. Hard to know. No windows, no sun." Her voice was steady, but Sam could hear the pain underneath. "Then one day men came. Said we were being moved to work in houses for important men. But instead," she gestured to herself, to the chains. "Instead they put you up for auction," Sam finished grimly. "Yes, like cow or horse." She met his eyes in the reflection of the wagon's side mirror. "You are first person to ask my name, to ask about my family." That simple statement hit Sam harder than any accusation could have. He pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down, walking around to face her. "I need to get these chains off you," he said. "I've got tools back at the ranch, but I can't stand seeing you wear them another minute." He pulled a small crowbar from his toolkit and examined the shackles. They were well made, but not impossible to break. The problem was doing it without hurting her. "This might be uncomfortable," he warned. "I'll try to be careful." "I am used to uncomfortable," she said simply. Sam worked carefully, wedging the crowbar between the iron cuff and the connecting chain. With a sharp crack, the first link snapped. Mei-Lin rubbed her wrist where the metal had chafed the skin raw. "Better?" Sam asked. She nodded, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "Thank you." As Sam worked on the ankle shackles, Mei-Lin spoke again. "Your son, Timothy, you said he lost mother. 3 years ago, consumption took her." Sam's voice roughened slightly. She was everything good in this world. Kind, strong, gentle. Timothy adored her. And now he is sad. More than sad. He barely speaks anymore. Won't play with other children. Sometimes I catch him just sitting by her grave, talking to the headstone like she's still there. Mei-Lin was quiet as Sam finished with the chains. When he stood up, she remained seated for a moment, just flexing her newly freed hands and feet. "In China," she said finally, "we believe that mothers who die young become like guardian spirits, watching over children, guiding them. Maybe Timothy's mother sent you to find me." Sam found himself oddly comforted by the thought. Maybe she did. They rode the rest of the way in companionable silence, the tension that had marked the first part of their journey gradually easing. As they crested the final hill before the ranch, Mei-Lin drew in a sharp breath. The double S spread out below them in the late afternoon sun, a main house built of local stone and timber, surrounded by corrals, barns, and outbuildings. Cattle dotted the pastures that stretched to the horizon, and horses grazed in a fenced paddock near the house. It was beautiful in the way that only a place built with love and backbreaking labor could be. "This is home," Sam said, surprised by how much he wanted her approval. "Is beautiful," Mei-Lin said softly, "like picture in book." As they pulled up to the main house, Sam could see a small figure watching from the front porch. Timothy, 8 years old, with his mother's delicate features and Sam's determined chin, stood perfectly still, his dark eyes taking in every detail of the woman in the wagon. Sam climbed down and walked around to help Mei-Lin, but she had already stepped down on her own, her movements graceful despite the hours of travel. She smoothed her torn dress as best she could and approached the porch where Timothy waited. For a long moment, the woman and the boy just looked at each other. Timothy's expression was guarded, cautious. He'd learned not to trust that good things would stay. "Hello, Timothy," Mei-Lin said, her accented voice gentle. "My name is Mei-Lin. Your father tells me you are a very good boy." Timothy glanced at his father, then back at Mei-Lin. "Are you going to stay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It was the most Sam had heard his son say to a stranger in months. Mei-Lin knelt down so she was at Timothy's eye level. "I would like to stay if that is all right with you. Your father says you might need friend. Someone to help take care of house, maybe cook good food." Timothy nodded slowly. "I get hungry sometimes, but Papa burns everything." "Hey now," Sam protested, trying to inject some lightness into the moment. "I only burned dinner twice this week." The corner of Timothy's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. It was more expression than Sam had seen from his son in weeks. "Maybe," Mei-Lin said thoughtfully, "you could help me learn to cook American food, and I could teach you to cook Chinese food. Would you like that?" Timothy considered this seriously. "Do you know how to make cookies?" "I can learn. Chinese cookies or American cookies?" "Both?" "Both," Mei-Lin agreed solemnly. And then, miracle of miracles, Timothy smiled. It was small and tentative, but it was real. Sam felt something tight in his chest finally begin to loosen. For the first time in 3 years, his house felt like it might become a home again. 3 months later, January 1883, the blizzard that swept down from the mountains hit the Double S Ranch with the fury of a living thing, turning the world into a swirling wall of white that made it impossible to see beyond the porch. Sam stood at the kitchen window, watching the storm and feeling grateful that all the cattle had been moved to the lower pastures before the weather turned. Behind him, the kitchen was warm and filled with the most wonderful smells. Mei-Lin was teaching Timothy to make dumplings, a process that seemed to involve as much flour on the boy as in the actual dumplings. "No, no," Mei-Lin was saying. her patient voice carrying just a hint of laughter. Like this, see? Fold, twist, pinch. Fold, twist, pinch. Mine looks like a dead fish, Timothy said, holding up his mangled attempt. All first dumplings look like dead fish, Mei-Lin assured him. Even mine did when I was your age. My grandmother used to say that ugly dumplings taste better because they try harder to please. Timothy giggled, actually giggled, and Sam felt that familiar tightness in his chest, but good this time. In the 3 months since Mei-Lin had come to live with them, Timothy had transformed. He still had quiet moments, still missed his mother terribly, but the profound sadness that had settled over him like a shroud was finally lifting. The change in the house was dramatic. Curtains had appeared in the windows, bright yellow ones that Mei-Lin had sewn from fabric Sam had bought in Silver Creek. The floors were swept clean daily, meals appeared on time and were actually edible, and there were flowers on the kitchen table even in winter, dried wildflowers that Mei-Lin had gathered in the fall. But it was more than just the physical changes. There was laughter in the house again, conversation at dinner. Timothy chattering about his lessons. Mei-Lin had been teaching him to read and write Chinese characters while he helped her with English pronunciation. "Papa," Timothy called out, interrupting Sam's thoughts. "Mei-Lin says in China they have a new year that's different from ours, with dragons and fireworks and everything." "Is that so?" Sam asked, turning from the window. "Chinese New Year comes in February this year," Mei-Lin explained, her hands still working the dumpling dough. "Very big celebration. Families come together, share special foods, tell stories about ancestors." "Could we celebrate it?" Timothy asked eagerly. "Could we have Chinese New Year here?" Sam and Mei-Lin's eyes met across the kitchen. In the month since she'd arrived, they'd developed an easy partnership, but they'd been careful to maintain appropriate boundaries. She had her own room, he had his, and they'd never discussed the exact nature of their arrangement beyond the practical. But moments like this, when Timothy's face lit up with excitement, when the three of them felt like a real family, made those boundaries feel increasingly artificial. "I think that would be wonderful," Sam said. "What would we need to do?" "Well," Mei-Lin said thoughtfully, "traditionally we clean house completely to sweep away bad luck from old year. We prepare special foods, dumplings for wealth, fish for abundance, noodles for long life, and we give children small gifts wrapped in red paper." "Red paper brings good luck?" Timothy asked. "Very good luck. Red is most lucky color in China." Timothy was practically bouncing with excitement. "Can we do all of that? Please, Papa?" Sam found himself smiling at his son's enthusiasm. "I don't see why not, though we might have to improvise on some of the traditional parts." "Maybe we could invite Jake Morrison," Mei-Lin suggested. "He has been kind to us. Should not celebrate alone." She was right. Jake had been one of the few people in the area who had accepted their unusual family arrangement without judgment. He often stopped by on his rounds, sharing a meal and treating Mei-Lin with the same respect he'd show any rancher's wife. "Good idea," Sam agreed. "I'll ride into town next week and see if we can get some red paper," and a sharp bang from outside interrupted him. Then another. Sam frowned, moving to the window. The storm was too heavy to see anything, but those sounds... "Someone's shooting," he said grimly. Another bang, closer this time, then the sound of horses approaching through the storm. Sam moved quickly to the gun cabinet, pulling out his rifle. "Mei-Lin, take Timothy to the back bedroom, now." "What's happening?" Timothy asked, his voice suddenly small and scared. "Probably just cowboys taking shelter from the storm," Sam said, trying to keep his voice calm. "But better safe than sorry." Mei-Lin didn't argue. She scooped Timothy up despite his 8-year-old protests and headed for the back of the house. "Stay low," Sam called after them. The shooting stopped, but Sam could hear voices outside now, muffled by the storm, but definitely there. He moved to the front window and carefully peered out. Through the swirling snow he could make out shapes, at least 4 men on horseback gathered near his front gate. One of them was holding a torch that flickered wildly in the wind. Sam's blood ran cold when he recognized the voice shouting over the storm. "Cartwright, we know you're in there. Come out and let's settle this like men." Bill Hedricks, the man who'd been outbid at the auction 3 months ago. "What do you want, Hedricks?" Sam called back, not opening the door. I want what's mine. That Chinese girl was promised to me before you showed up with your dirty money." "The auction was legal and witnessed," Sam replied. "You had your chance to bid." "Legal maybe, but not right. It ain't natural, a colored man owning a white woman." "She's not owned by anybody," Sam's voice carried clearly despite the storm. "She's free to make her own choices." Harsh laughter from outside. "Free? Is that what you call it? We all know what you're really doing with her." Sam felt rage building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry would only make this worse. "You're drunk, Hendricks. Go home and sleep it off." "I ain't drunk. I'm tired of pretending this is acceptable. Tired of watching you parade around town with that heathen woman like you're some kind of respectable family." Another voice joined in. Sam recognized it as one of Hedrick's ranch hands. "Yeah, it's an affront to Christian values. Last chance, Cartwright," Hedrick shouted. "Send the girl out and we'll call it even." Sam checked his rifle and moved to the front door. This had gone far enough. "So the only thing getting sent out," he called back, "is you and your boys right now before this gets ugly." "It's already ugly," Hedricks replied, "but it's about to get a whole lot worse." Sam heard the unmistakable sound of guns being cocked. These men hadn't come to talk. They'd come for a fight. From the back of the house he could hear Mei-Lin's voice, soft and soothing, trying to calm Timothy's frightened questions. Sam thought about his son, safe for now but terrified. He thought about Mei-Lin, who had already suffered so much cruelty at the hands of men who saw her as less than human, and he thought about Margaret, his beloved wife, who had faced down angry mobs when she chose to marry him. What would she do in this situation? The answer came to him clearly. She would fight, not for pride or stubbornness, but for family, for the right to live with dignity and love whoever they chose to love. Sam opened the front door and stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand but not yet raised. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had faced down Confederate cavalry and lived to tell about it. "You're on my property without invitation, in the middle of a blizzard making threats against my family. I suggest you reconsider your position." "Your family?" Hedrick spat. "That's rich. A Negro, a Chinaman, and a half-breed. That ain't a family, that's an abomination." The words hit Sam like physical blows, but not because they hurt him, because of what they meant for Timothy and Mei-Lin. This wasn't just about prejudice anymore. This was about men who would use violence to enforce their vision of what families should look like. "Last warning," Sam said, raising his rifle. "Leave my property now, or I start shooting." For a moment, nobody moved. The wind howled around them, and snow continued to fall like nature's own verdict on the ugly scene. Then Hedricks raised his gun. "I need to pause here, because what happens next in our story is about to change everything. But before we get there, I want you to understand something crucial. This isn't just entertainment. These were real people, facing real hatred, real violence, all because they dared to build a family that didn't fit society's narrow definitions. Stories like Samuel and Mei-Lin's happened across the American frontier, but they were buried, forgotten, erased from the history books. The Black Rancher exists to make sure these voices are heard. If this story is gripping you, if it's making you think differently about family, love, and courage, then please, hit that subscribe button and share this video. Every share helps ensure that stories like this one don't disappear forever. Chapter 5 is coming up, and I promise you, the ending will leave you speechless. Don't go anywhere. The gunshot cracked through the storm like thunder, but it wasn't Hedricks who fired first. It was Sam. His bullet took Hedrick's hat clean off his head, sending the man tumbling backward off his horse into the snow. The other 3 men scrambled for their weapons, but Sam had already worked the bolt on his rifle. "Next shot won't be a warning," Sam shouted over the wind. But before anyone else could draw, another voice cut through the storm, clear, strong, and unexpected. "Stop!" Mei-Lin stood in the doorway behind Sam, Timothy at her side. In her hands was Sam's shotgun, and though she held it awkwardly, there was no mistaking her determination. "Mei-Lin, get back inside," Sam commanded without taking his eyes off the men in his yard. "No," she said simply. "This is my family too. My choice to make." She stepped forward, the shotgun steady in her hands despite her obvious inexperience with firearms. When she spoke, her voice carried to every man in the yard. "You want to know what happened here?" she called out to Hendricks, who was struggling to his feet in the snow. "I tell you, this man, Samuel Cartwright, he saved me, not bought me, saved me." The wind seemed to quiet slightly, as if even nature wanted to hear what she had to say. "In China, my village was destroyed, family killed. I was sold like animal to men who promised work but gave only suffering. For 3 years I lived in cage, worked like slave, beaten when I was too slow, too tired, too human." Her voice grew stronger with each word, years of suppressed pain and dignity finally finding their voice. "Then I was put in chains, brought to your town, sold again like cattle, and you—" She pointed the shotgun directly at Hendricks. "You would have bought me to use me, break me, throw me away when finished." Hendricks opened his mouth to object, but Mei-Lin wasn't finished. "But this man, Samuel, he did something none of you would do. He saw me as person, human being with heart, with mind, with soul. He brought me to his home and said, 'You are free. You choose your life now.'" Timothy stepped forward then, his small hand slipping into Sam's free one. "And I chose," Mei-Lin continued, her voice softening slightly. "I chose to stay, not because I was owned, but because I was wanted. Not for my body or my work, but for my heart. Samuel asked me to help his son remember how to smile. Timothy asked me to teach him about my homeland. They gave me something I thought was lost forever, family." She shifted the shotgun, and every man in the yard tensed. "So when you come here with guns and hate, when you call us abomination, when you say we are not real family," her voice hardened again, "you are wrong. We choose each other. Every day we choose each other. That is what makes family. You can't choose to go against nature," one of Hendricks' men shouted. "Nature?" Mei-Lin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think nature cares about color of skin? You think mountains care if man is black or white? You think rivers care if woman is Chinese or American? Only small minds care about such things." Sam felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly overwhelmed him. This woman, this incredible, brave woman, was fighting for their family with words more powerful than any weapon. "You want to know what is against nature?" Mei-Lin continued. "Hate is against nature. Cruelty is against nature. Selling human beings like animals, that is against nature. But love? Love that crosses color, crosses countries, crosses everything that small men use to divide us, that is most natural thing in world." Timothy suddenly let go of Sam's hand and stepped forward. At 8 years old, he was barely half Mei-Lin's height, but his voice rang out clear and strong. "Mei-Lin is my mother now," he announced to the men in the yard. "Not because someone bought her, but because she chose to love me, and I chose to love her back. And if you want to hurt her, you have to go through me too." The simple declaration from a child had more power than all of Sam's threats. Even Hendricks seemed momentarily shaken by the boy's fierce loyalty. "This is madness," Hendricks muttered, but his voice had lost its conviction. "No," said a new voice from the edge of the property. "This is family." Sheriff Jake Morrison rode out of the storm, his badge glinting in the torchlight. Behind him came 2 deputies, their rifles at the ready. "Jake," Sam said with relief, "how did you—" "Mrs. Patterson at the general store saw these boys ride out in this storm, all liquored up and talking about setting things right," Jake explained, dismounting from his horse. "Figured they might be headed this way." He looked around the yard, taking in the scene. Sam with his rifle, Mei-Lin with the shotgun, Timothy standing guard beside them, and Hendricks and his men caught in the middle of what was clearly an attempted assault. "Bill Hendricks," Jake said conversationally, "you want to explain to me why you're on Samuel Cartwright's property in the middle of a blizzard, armed and making threats?" "We ain't done nothing wrong," Hendricks protested. "We just came to talk." "With guns? In a storm?" Jake's voice was dry. "That's an interesting definition of talk." "Sheriff," one of the deputies said quietly, "we found bottles in their saddlebags. They've been drinking heavy." Jake nodded grimly. "Bill, you and your boys are going to mount up and ride back to town with us. We'll continue this conversation in my jail, where it's warm and nobody's likely to get shot." "This ain't over, Cartwright," Hendricks snarled as he struggled to his feet. "There are plenty of folks who agree with me. You can't hide behind the sheriff forever. I'm not hiding behind anybody, Sam replied calmly. But if you come onto my property again uninvited, I won't be aiming for your hat. Jake and his deputies efficiently rounded up Hedricks and his men, confiscating their weapons and helping them onto their horses. Before he left, Jake approached the porch where Sam, Mei-Lin, and Timothy still stood. "You folks all right?" he asked. "We're fine, Jake. Thanks for coming." Jake looked at Mei-Lin, who was still holding the shotgun, with determined if inexpert hands. "Ma'am, you might want to let Samuel teach you to handle that thing properly." "Something tells me you might need to know." "I would like that," Mei-Lin replied seriously. Jake tipped his hat to all three of them. "You've got a good family here, Sam. Different maybe, but good. Don't let small-minded fools tell you otherwise." As the sheriff and his prisoners disappeared into the storm, Sam finally allowed himself to relax. He turned to look at Mei-Lin and Timothy, both of them still standing ready to defend their home. "You didn't have to do that," he said to Mei-Lin. "Either of you, that was dangerous." "Yes, we did," Timothy said firmly. "That's what families do, they protect each other." Mei-Lin lowered the shotgun and looked at Sam with eyes that held depths he was only beginning to understand. "Timothy is right. We choose to be family. That means we choose to fight for each other." Standing there on his porch in the middle of a Nevada blizzard, surrounded by the two people who had somehow become his whole world, Sam realized that his life had taken a turn he never could have imagined. 3 months ago, he'd been a lonely widower with a grieving son. Now he was part of something beautiful and strange and powerful, a family forged not by blood or law or tradition, but by choice and courage and love. "Come on," he said, putting his arm around both of them. "Let's get inside before we all freeze. I think we've had enough excitement for one night." But as they headed for the warmth of the house, Timothy looked up at Mei-Lin with a question in his eyes. "Mei-Lin, when you said I could call you mother, did you mean it?" She knelt down in the snow, taking his small hands in hers. "Timothy, in China we have saying, blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. You are not of my blood, but you are of my heart. If you want to call me mother, I would be honored. What would I call you? Just mother. In Chinese, mother is mama, but you can call me whatever feels right to you." Timothy considered this seriously. "Could I call you Mama Mei, so everyone knows you're my Chinese mama?" Tears sprang to Mei-Lin's eyes. "I would like that very much." "And Papa," Timothy continued, turning to Sam, "when are you going to marry Mama Mei? Because if she's going to be my mother, shouldn't she be your wife?" Sam felt his face heat up despite the cold. In all the months of their careful partnership, neither he nor Mei-Lin had spoken directly about the future of their relationship. "Timothy," he said carefully, That's complicated. Mei-Lin and I, we're friends, partners. But marriage is what people do when they love each other and want to be family forever," Timothy interrupted, with the devastating logic of childhood. "Don't you love Mama Mei, Papa?" Sam looked at Mei-Lin, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Did he love her? The honest answer was yes, he had for weeks now, maybe months. But love and marriage were two different things, especially for people like them. "Timothy," Mei-Lin said gently, "your papa and I, we come from very different worlds. Marriage between Chinese woman and black man, it is not easy thing. People like Mr. Hedricks, they would not accept it." "So," Timothy said, with the magnificent indifference of a child who hadn't yet learned that the world's opinion mattered, "they don't live here. We do. And I think you love Papa too, don't you, Mama Mei?" Mei-Lin's cheeks flushed pink. Whether from cold or embarrassment, Sam couldn't tell. "Your papa is good man," she said carefully. "Kind man, strong man. He saved my life, gave me home, treated me with respect when no one else would." "That's not what I asked," Timothy pressed with the persistence of a lawyer. "Do you love him?" For a long moment, the three of them stood in the falling snow, the question hanging in the air between them. Finally, Mei-Lin looked directly at Sam. "Yes," she said simply. "I love him. I love both of you. You are my family, my home, my heart. But Timothy, love is not always enough. Sometimes the world makes love difficult. Sam felt something break open in his chest, something that had been locked away since Margaret died. He stepped closer to Mei-Lin, close enough to see the snowflakes caught in her dark eyelashes. "The world's been making life difficult for me since the day I was born," he said quietly. "I'm not about to let it stop me from being happy now." He reached out and took her hand, cold and small in his. "Mei-Lin, I know this isn't romantic and I know the timing is terrible, but would you consider being my wife? Really my wife, not just my partner?" She stared at him for a long moment, her breath making small clouds in the cold air. "You are sure? Even knowing how hard it will be? How many people will hate us?" "Let them hate us," Sam said fiercely, "as long as we love each other. And as long as I get to have both my parents," Timothy added practically. "Because I already told the kids at school that Mama May was my new mother, and if you don't get married, I'll look like a liar." Both adults stared at him in shock. "You told the kids at school?" Sam began. "Well, yeah. Billy Henderson was bragging about his new stepmother, so I told him my new mother was from China and could cook dumplings and knew Kung Fu. Which reminds me, Mama May, can you teach me Kung Fu?" I do not know Kung Fu," Mei-Lin said faintly. "That's okay, we can learn together," Timothy said cheerfully. "So are you going to get married or not, because I'm getting cold?" Sam and Mei-Lin looked at each other and burst into laughter, the kind of laughter that comes after fear and danger and the realization that sometimes the most important decisions are the easiest ones to make. "Yes," Mei-Lin said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you, Samuel Cartwright. I will be your wife and Timothy's mother, and part of this strange, wonderful family we have made." Sam kissed her then, right there in the snow, with his son cheering beside them and the wind carrying away the last echoes of hatred and fear. It wasn't the first kiss they'd shared. There had been careful, tentative moments over the past few weeks, but it was the first kiss of their future together. When they finally broke apart, Timothy was grinning widely. "Can we have the wedding at Chinese New Year?" he asked. "With the red paper and the dragons and everything?" "If that's what you want," Sam said, ruffling his son's hair. "And can Jake Morrison give Mama May away, since she doesn't have a father here?" "That's actually a wonderful idea," Mei-Lin said, touched by the boy's thoughtfulness. "And can we have dumplings at the wedding dinner instead of regular cake?" "We can have both," Sam promised. "Dumplings and cake." "Best wedding ever," Timothy declared with satisfaction. As they finally headed inside, Sam realized that his son was right. It would be the best wedding ever, not because it would be fancy or traditional, but because it would be theirs. A celebration of a family that had chosen itself, built itself from the broken pieces of 3 separate lives. 1 year later, Chinese New Year, 1884. The Double S Ranch had never seen anything like it. Red lanterns hung from every fence post and building, their warm glow visible for miles across the snowy landscape. The main house blazed with light and warmth, filled with the sounds of laughter, conversation, and the clinking of dishes. Sam stood in his own kitchen, marveling at the transformation. What had started as a small Chinese New Year celebration had turned into the social event of the season. It seemed like half the territory had shown up, ranchers and miners, storekeepers and railroad workers, even some of the Chinese workers from the mine camps, eager to share their traditions with this unlikely family that had embraced them. Jake Morrison was holding court near the fireplace, regaling a group of listeners with the story of the wedding he'd performed 6 months earlier. "Never seen a ceremony quite like it," he was saying. Part American, part Chinese, part Samuel and Mei-Lin, making up their own traditions as they went along. Most beautiful thing I ever witnessed. In the corner, Timothy was teaching a group of younger children how to fold dumplings, his patient instruction a perfect echo of the way Mei-Lin had taught him. The boy had grown in the past year, not just physically, but in confidence and joy. He was fluent in basic Chinese now, could cook 3 different types of noodles, and had appointed himself the official ambassador between his mother's homeland and his father's. "Papa Sam," called Maria Santos, the 7-year-old daughter of one of Sam's hired hands. Timothy says Mama Mei used to live in a palace in China. Is that true? Sam chuckled, looking over at his wife. Mei-Lin had a gift for making her past adventures sound more exotic than they probably were, especially when she had an audience of wide-eyed children. Well, Sam said conspiratorially, I think what Timothy means is that Mama Mei is a princess, and princesses make every place they live feel like a palace. The children giggled and Mei-Lin blushed prettily from across the room. Even after a year of marriage, Sam could still make her blush with unexpected compliments. Tell us the story again, demanded Bobby Mitchell, age 5, about how Papa Sam saved Mama Mei from the bad men. Again? Sam protested. I must have told that story a dozen times tonight. Please, chorused several voices. All right, Sam said, settling into his chair. But this time I want Timothy to help tell it. Timothy immediately abandoned his dumpling-making duties and climbed onto Sam's lap. At 9, he was getting almost too big for such things, but special occasions called for special privileges. Once upon a time, Sam began, there was a brave woman who traveled across the ocean from a faraway land. China, Timothy added helpfully. That's right, China. And she was brought to a town where people didn't understand that she was special. As Sam told the story, a cleaned-up, child-friendly version of their meeting, he caught Mei-Lin's eye across the room. She was listening to the tale of their courtship with a soft smile, one hand resting on her rounded belly. Their second child was due in the spring, and Timothy was beside himself with excitement about becoming a big brother. He'd already informed everyone who would listen that the baby would be half Chinese, half African, and all American, and that he planned to teach it everything he knew about both cultures. The evening wound down slowly, families gradually bundling up their children and heading out into the cold night. Sam and Mei-Lin stood on their front porch, waving goodbye to the last of their guests, Timothy, fast asleep against Sam's shoulder. Good party, Mei-Lin said contentedly, leaning against Sam's free side. The best, Sam agreed, though I think we're going to be finding red confetti for weeks. Was worth it. Timothy will remember this always. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out over their land. In the distance, cattle moved slowly across the moonlit pastures, and the mountains stood guard against the star-filled sky. Sam, Mei-Lin said quietly, do you ever regret it? Choosing us, I mean. Choosing this difficult life. Sam turned to look at her, this incredible woman who had brought light back into his world. Do you remember what you told those men that night in the storm? About how love that crosses everything is the most natural thing in the world? She nodded. You were right, Sam said simply. He gestured to encompass their home, their sleeping son, the life they'd built together. This is the most natural thing I've ever done. Loving you, raising Timothy with you, building this family. It's like breathing. Essential. Mei-Lin smiled and stood on tiptoe to kiss him. Good answer, husband. I have my moments. As they headed inside, Timothy stirred in Sam's arms. Papa, he mumbled sleepily. What is it, son? Next year, can we invite even more people? I want the whole territory to know how awesome our family is. Sam and Mei-Lin exchanged amused glances. We'll see, Timothy, we'll see. But as Sam tucked his son into bed and Mei-Lin began cleaning up the remnants of their celebration, he found himself thinking that Timothy might be onto something. Their family was awesome, not because it was perfect, but because it was theirs. Built on choice and courage and the radical idea that love doesn't recognize the boundaries that fear tries to create. They'd faced opposition and would face more. There would always be people like Bill Hedricks who couldn't accept families that didn't fit their narrow definitions. But there would also be people like Jake Morrison, like the neighbors who had filled their house tonight, like the children who saw Timothy as simply their friend, who happened to have a Chinese mother and a black father. The world was changing, slowly and sometimes painfully. But it was changing, and families like theirs, families built on love rather than convention, were helping to change it. As Sam finally climbed into bed beside his wife, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. From an auction block in Silver Creek to a warm bed in a house filled with love and laughter. from chains and humiliation to freedom and dignity, from 3 broken people to 1 strong family. It was, he reflected as sleep took him, a pretty good story. The kind of story that deserved to be told and remembered and passed down to children who would build their own families, on the foundation of love and choice and courage. The kind of story that proved once and for all that the most powerful force in the world isn't hate or fear or tradition. It's the radical act of choosing to love across every line that others use to divide us. Samuel, Mei-Lin and Timothy's story reminds us that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, courage, and the radical act of loving across every boundary that society tries to build. Their story happened in 1882, but it echoes through every generation that has dared to love beyond the limits of convention, every family that has chosen each other, despite the odds, every person who has stood up and said, "Love is love and family is family." These stories matter. They show us that the America we know today was built not just by the famous names in history books, but by ordinary people making extraordinary choices. People like Samuel, who saw dignity where others saw property. Like Mei-Lin, who chose hope over despair. Like Timothy, who understood that love makes family long before the adults figured it out. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think differently about family, love and courage, then please subscribe to the Black Rancher channel and share this video. Every share helps preserve these voices that deserve to be heard. Hit that notification bell so you never miss these powerful stories from America's hidden history. And in the comments below, tell us, what did this story mean to you? How do you define family? These aren't just stories. They're reminders that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose love over fear, hope over hate, and courage over conformity. Until next time, this is the Black Rancher, reminding you that the most important history is often the history they forgot to write down. Thank you for watching, for caring, and for helping keep these stories alive.